All right, guys, welcome back to our video series here on HELOCs versus mortgage. This is part two. If you have not watched part one, go to our 9to5ers homepage and definitely check out part one because this part won't make too much sense unless you watch part one. So a quick disclosure here, guys, please use the following information for educational purposes only. We are not lawyers, certified public accountants, or financial advisors. Please seek professional advice on an as-needed basis. So, HELOCs, first position HELOCs. Who does this work for? Disciplined people. And I kind of wish I could go back right now and make this font bigger, 10 times bigger, underlined 1,000 times, highlighted, italicized, all the above. This only works for people that are disciplined, financially disciplined. You have to be financially disciplined for this to work because you're opening up a potential disaster if you are not a disciplined person. Now, if you're not a disciplined person, that's fine. When it comes to finances, then just don't do this. And that's 100% okay. You have to be disciplined to do this. I put good credit score up here, 650 or higher. This is going to fluctuate, but generally you're going to get better terms with a higher credit score. And if you can get in the mid 700s, you're going to get one of the best rates out there. And so just be aware of that. It's the same as a mortgage. If you're applying for a mortgage, the lower your credit score is, the lower, the higher interest rate's going to be. And this is the same way for the first position HELOC. Positive and consistent cash flow most months. Now, most months means most months. And what I'm saying that is that I understand that life happens. You have a car accident or something breaks down at your house, you get to replace a water tank, hot water tank, maybe you get laid off from work. I get that. We get that. But we want positive and consistent cash flow most months coming in, because cash flow, and the bigger that is, the more you can put towards that principal every single month, and you can keep that average daily principal balance amount as low as humanly possible. You're going to have a much higher success rate if you have an excess of $1,000 per month coming in. You make $1,000 more than what you spend going into that HELOC versus someone that has an excess of $25 a month. There are 1.5 million ways to earn some extra income or reduce your expenses. And actually, those are some videos that we already have up on the 9to5ers page there. So if you want to, check those out. But it's consistent cash flow and it's also positive. I can't give you an exact number here, but $25 a month isn't going to cut it. It has to be, you have to be able to take a small hit and still have a positive cash flow every single month. Emergency fund in place. This I will say is, I gotta make sure I word this properly here. Emergency funds are important. They are. And you can choose to put your emergency fund inside of the HELOC and have it working for you, or you can have it sitting outside. But you got to be ready for those hot water tanks breaking down on you, those car engines that don't work, and you take it to the mechanic, and you take it to a mechanic, and it's an actual honest mechanic, and he says, you need $500 worth of work here, or whatever. You got to have that some money set aside. Now, if you want to set it aside in the checking account that's outside the HELOC, then that money's not going to be working for you. But it's also outside the HELOC, and that kind of can be important later on down the road, but we'll talk about that. But either way, you have to have an emergency fund in place. Some equity in your home already. And I put 20% in parentheses. That is generally it's not the maximum, but it's close to the maximum. I've seen people that have I've seen banks that'll do 100%. I've seen banks that'll do 90%. And I've seen banks that'll do 80% of their upper tiers. I personally stay away from any bank that's going to offer me 100% or 90%. That's just way too tempting to max out your HELOC, and then now you have the potential of going underwater on your house, and you don't want to do that. In case they call that loan for some reason or they freeze your HELOC, the higher percent you have in equity, the better off you're going to be. We all know what happened in 2008 with that crisis. have some, you want to go for as much equity as you possibly can in your house. I would say 20% or more. That's kind of what I'm looking at there, but be your own judge on that. Questions you want to ask yourself here. Would I be able to see $100,000 in my bank account and not spend it? That's a tough question, but it's an honest question. And the only person you actually have to be honest with is the person in the mirror. You don't have to be honest with me. You don't have to be honest with anybody else. Can you be honest with the person in front of the mirror? Or are you going to lie to that person? That person is the only one that actually matters. Can you have $100,000 sitting in your quote unquote bank account, your quote unquote HELOC, and not spend it on something frivolous, like a car or a bass boat or something that is not an asset? Do I have a plan in place to pay down this debt till it's gone? Before you even go out and start vetting lenders, think about it. What's my credit score at? How much equity do I have in my house already? How much cash flow do I have per month? Is it 25 bucks? Is it 250 bucks? Is it 500 bucks? How long would it take me? Am I disciplined? And this is all reiterating from the last presentation that we did, are the cons of having a HELOC. You have that capacity to have access to money that maybe you've never had access to before. I know it feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but man, you have to be disciplined. It's so important. Plan of action. How do we, let's say that you answered that I'm ready to go, let's get gung-ho. Get your financial documents in order. And if you're wondering what these financial documents are, it's going to be anything that a lender would ask you for if you were applying for a regular old-fashioned mortgage. So your W-2, pay stubs, last year's tax returns, this year's tax returns, bank statements, your credit score. When it comes to credit score, you want to know where the ballpark that you're at in. And you can pull your own credit once a year without it impacting your credit. But you want to kind of know where you're at. Are you at a 450 or are you at an 800 or a 750? So know where you're at there. If you have any 401ks, that type of stuff, anything that they would ask for, basically, start pulling those documents together because they're going to ask for them either way. Create your tax plan. Mind and money must be on the same page. Do I have this discipline? Can I stay focused? How am I going to maximize my debt pay down? How can I be debt free in 5 years, in 7 years versus 30 years? Find a lender. There's a bunch of lenders out there that are willing to do this. You just make sure you have to ask the right questions, and we'll get to that on the next slide. But this might take some time. There are also companies out there that have lists of lenders that are willing to do this. You have to pay for that list. It's up to you whether or not, however you want to go about it. You can just start calling people up and asking them, or you can buy a list off of somebody else. Vet the lender, and that'll be the questions that you'll ask them there. Review carefully and ask questions. This is a critical one, guys. This is a totally new avenue. Ask the lender questions. What if this happens? What if this happens? What if this happens? And you kind of have to be your own advocate here. If they start to get squirrely or salesy or weird or vague on their answers, I would just throw them in the trash. I would get rid of that lender because they're hiding something or something's not right there. It doesn't mean that that what they have is fraudulent. It means that they're not being honest. And if they're not being honest from you in the jump, then they don't deserve your business. So ask questions, be methodical, and if you have to, reach out to an attorney and have that person look it over, or a CPA or somebody, or someone that you trust that is financially savvy. Maybe it's someone that's gone through it before already. They can look through some stuff for you, and someone that you trust. But take your time reading these documents. Don't rush. Sign the documents and go. That's pretty much it. So lender questions. These are when you're sitting down in front of your lender. The first thing you're going to want to ask your lender is, do you guys actually do a first position HELOC instead of a mortgage? If they don't know, then you need to get to the department that does know quickly. Or whoever picks up the phone probably isn't going to be the person that you need to talk to. So just call up their lending department. I want to talk to your lending department, your residential mortgage lending department, and just ask them, do you do a first position HELOC on a house instead of a mortgage? If the answer is yes, then we can move on. If it's no, or I don't know, then vet them out or move on. So a question you want to ask them is, how do you calculate your interest rate? Now remember, HELOCs have variable interest rates. So you're going to get an interest rate, and it's going to be a variable interest rate, which means it can go up, it can go down, it can stay the same. An example is LIBOR plus 2%, or they have to base their interest rate off of something that is out of their control. It could be the 10-year treasury note. It could be the Fed funds rate. It could be whatever. But it's whatever they're basing it off of plus X percent equals your percent. Why do you care? Well, you need to know this planning moving forward, because if that base goes up, then you need to expect that your interest rate is going to go up too. If it goes down, then you can at least know, okay, my interest rate's going to stay the same or it's going to go down. But you need to be aware of what you need to be watching, because if that interest rate goes up or down, you need to be able to be ready to make adjustments to your finances. Or if the interest rate goes way up, then you might need to possibly find an exit strategy out or convert to a fixed rate loan, whatever. But just ask them, what do you base your interest rate off of? How do you calculate your what the interest rate is going to be per month? Now, this is different from how they whether it's 6%, 4%, not that. It's how are you calculating the balance of what you're basing? Is it 6% versus what my daily average was last month? Because remember, they're basing their rate that they're going to charge you based off the balance of the loan that you still have. Now, is that what was the average? Was it based off of the average rate that it was last month? Was it based off of a certain day? Was it based off of the highest? Was it based off of lowest? What is it based off of? This isn't super duper important, but it's good to know. Closing costs, question mark. Now, I did say that HELOCs don't have closing costs, or they have low closing costs. Some of them do have closing costs. They should be lower than regular closing costs for a mortgage. But if they are, what are they and how much are they generally? Now, a lot of times lenders get a little squirmy here because they don't want to tell you something, because if they tell you it's this amount and then it turns out to be another amount, then they think they're going to get a bunch of fingers pointed at them. Just kind of give them a little bit of grace here and just be like, listen, what am I expected to pay? What's the highest you think I should pay? What's the highest that's probably going to be? What's the lowest, and what's the average? So then they can give you 3 numbers, but you want to kind of have an idea, is there closing costs? And if so, how much are they? Full appraisal or a BPO. A full appraisal means that you have to pay out of pocket your for someone to walk through that house, take pictures, take measurements, do a full neighborhood analysis, compare it to other properties, and get a real life value of that property if it were to sell. Generally, this matters more if you don't have a lot of equity in your property. If you have a bunch of equity in your property, it might be smarter to push for a BPO. So that's a broker's opinion. And basically what that stands for is that they just do an automated valuation. That's another term of that. It's, I'm trying to think here to put this politely. It's an educated guess. They kind of just do a quick analysis, like, ah, man, it's probably like, I don't know, 110,000, boom, and then they're done. Versus a full appraisal, someone actually walking through a house and looking at every single thing. How old's the furnace? When was that updated? How old's the roof? When was that updated? When was the last time that? Oh, it's at the end of its life. Okay, I need to discount that. A BPO, they're going to make an educated guess. An appraisal is someone that's coming down to much of a finer point. BPOs can be all over the map. A full appraisal is much tighter. The difference is appraisal takes longer and you have to pay for it out of pocket before closing. So it's more of a, if it's a full appraisal, there's also potential of it could come back very low. But I try to shoot for a BPO to see what that's going to be first, because if that is correct and it's in line, I don't have to do an appraisal. But I've been in situations where we've done a BPO and it came in super low, and then we did a full appraisal, and then the full appraisal came back in properly. But just ask them. The full appraisal, like I said, is going to take a little bit longer, and it's going to cost you money. A BPO is not going to take very long, and it should be free. Variable or a fixed rate loan. Yes, there are fixed rate loans with the HELOCs. Generally, the banks don't offer the fixed rate, but if they do, they will be higher than your variable rate, because you're paying that premium for a rate that is you can guarantee, they're going to guarantee basically not to change. And that's up to you. That's up to you what you want to pick. And credit score requirements. I always ask them up front, this is roughly what my credit score is. And if everything else is perfect, would I be able to get a loan? You got to word these questions properly, because if you go to 10 banks and you get your credit score pulled 10 times, 10 hard inquiries, your credit score is going to go down. And it's not going to go down because you're a good person, bad person, sideways person, doesn't matter. It's because you got your credit score pulled 10 times within a short amount of time. That's going to suck. You don't want to do that. So a lot of times what I do is I'm just like, listen, I know what my credit score is. It's pretty close to this number. If everything else is perfect, would that be a deal breaker? And they will, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll pull your credit score last if everything else is done. But that also helps to know if you have a recent credit score, you can hand them that and just go, hey, listen, this is what it was 4 months ago. You know, I understand that you have to pull it again, but can we pull this last? And generally they'll work with you on that. And loan structure. Is it a 10-10 or a 10-20 or something else? Now, what the heck does that mean? In a HELOC, you have what's called a draw period, a period where it's an open-ended loan. It's a HELOC. And then generally what most HELOCs will do, if there's still a balance left, it will convert into a regular amortized mortgage. So let's look at the 10-10 here. A 10-10 is a 20-year loan total, but it's a 10-year draw period. So the first 10 years, it's a HELOC. And then whatever the remaining balance is, it converts into a traditional mortgage. And you have to pay that off in 10 years. And whatever the balance is, it's amortized out for 10 years. Now, what's a 10-20? Same thing. It's 10 years worth of draw periods, and that's your HELOC part of it. But if you don't pay it off within those 10 years, it will convert over to a 20-year loan, and you have to pay it off within the 20 years, and your loan structure and your payments are based off of 20 years. So that's important more for the exit strategy at the end. You may not get to the mortgage part on the second half, and there are ways around that too. We'll talk about that in a minute, in a couple slides, but just kind of be aware of it on the back end of what could possibly happen. So what ifs and frequently asked questions. I tried to hit the top couple here that most people have for me when they ask me about this. but I'm not going to be able to get them all. If you have some, throw them down there in the comments, and I'll do my best to get back to you and answer your questions. So here's a potential problem here. My variable rate interest went up. Well, let's think of some possible solutions here. You can find a new lender or hold your position. Now, if your interest rate went up, if it went up 0.5%, you should have calculated out so far that 0.5% won't change. You still are cash flowing fine. You're doing the debt attack, your focused debt attack, and let's say you were closer to the $333 a month in interest that you first started at. Now you're down to the $225 per month in interest, and let's say your interest rate went up a little bit. So instead of $225, now you're at $275. You're still within that realm of that you can still make those payments, no big deal. So you can technically hold your position. Generally, when rates go up, they go up across the board for most lenders. That's not always true, but just be aware of that. And that's something that could potentially happen. If you have this, generally hurts people when interest rates spike. They go up a lot over a consistent period of time. If you start out at like a 4% and you end up like at 11%, then yes, that would be horrible. But with this type of lending, you have to kind of be actively paying attention to it. And if you do find the new lender, you can always ask for a fixed, or you can flip to a traditional mortgage and get out of this completely. Like I said, this generally stings when rates go up quickly over a long period of time. The bank froze my HELOC. What do I do? What does that mean? A bank froze my HELOC. Well, basically what that means is that the banks have the right to freeze your HELOC, and they generally don't do that unless something happens that makes them nervous. So let's say that there's a market crash, they could potentially freeze your HELOC. If you get to the top of your debt to equity, so let's say that they're willing to lend you 80% of your value of your house, and you go above that, they might freeze it. But they can potentially freeze your HELOC. And what that means is that you can put money in, but you can't take money out. You can hold position and keep making your payments. You could pay the minimum payment, like the interest payment, and just kind of see what your options are. You can convert it to a mortgage. You can refinance it with somebody else, or you can dip into your emergency fund. There are some options there. I've never had one freeze on me, but I know people that have had that happen. And generally, if you're focusing on paying down your debt and you are building equity quickly, and the chances of it freezing get slimmer and slimmer over time. They called my loan. Well, what does that mean? If they call your loan, that's what's called an acceleration clause. And they would do that for the same basic reasons as if they were to if they were to freeze your HELOC too. All loans have an acceleration clause in them. The banks tend to breeze through it when they're explaining it to you. But generally, acceleration clauses go into effect if your house is today it's worth $300,000, and tomorrow the market crashes and now it's worth $100,000, and you still owe $250 on it. Well, they might call your loan because they have bad debt on their books, and they don't want to do that. Or maybe your house is in complete disrepair, like you haven't fixed up anything and it's just falling apart completely. And they go out and they go, holy moly, you haven't taken care of anything. Like the roof is leaking, the foundation's crumbling, the walls are coming in. We're calling your loan. All loans have this, an acceleration clause. And this might be a wake-up call to a lot of people, but if you have a mortgage, it has this. Plan ahead for some possible exit strategies that you want to have in place. just keeping your house up to date and well maintained, and you're paying down your debts. It's a rarity that they call these, because most people don't have $250,000 that they could just drop on a dime to the lender. If they did, they wouldn't have a loan in the first place. So if they called your loan and they knew you couldn't pay it, then they still have to go through foreclosure and they still have bad debt on their books. Normally, having a good relationship with your lender up front, making on-time payments, getting ahead on payments, keeping your house up to code, well maintained, that's going to stave off a lot of this. It's not impossible. I can't sit here and say that it's never going to happen, but it's rare, but it is possible, and it's possible for all loans. I did not make the payoff in the allotted time. So if we go back to that 10-10 or that 10-20, what happens to that? Well, like we said, it usually converts into a regular mortgage, whatever you owe, whatever is left on it, or you could refinance out with another lender, or find a new HELOC lender. There's a lot of different ways to do this. So outside the box thinking, this is a little bit more of something that if you're, I would say, a more sophisticated investor and you're looking to take it to the next level, you need to have more discipline. You need to have more organization. This is also more complicated, but it can be potentially more profitable. So here are 4 options that I've come up with. There's way more than 4 options. These are just the first 4 that popped in my brain. I figure I'd put it down here. So if you had a bunch of equity in your house, okay, what if you pulled that equity out and you bought a rental property at a cash discount? As in, either what they're saying is you bought it for cash, which means you paid under market price for it, and you put a renter in there, and now you use that rental income to pay down your HELOC, pay your HELOC back. So not only are you making payments yourself, but also your renter is making payments through their rent. That's a faster way to pay off your HELOC and have two houses at the same time, basically paid off. You could pull money out of your HELOC and private lend to other people. So let's say the bank charges you 5% to pull it out, and you lend your money to other investors at 12%. You're making a 7% profit. So you pull that money out, and but you still continue to make payments every single month. Your normal 429 payments plus all of your cash is sitting in there. When that interest payment comes in from that borrower, that 7% profit, that profit can go right to the balance getting paid down. That's another option. Taxes, no refunds. What does that mean? Well, if you have a W-2 job and you get taxes taken out of your paycheck, you have the option to put down 0 dependents, 1 dependent, 2, up to whatever it is. Now, 0 dependents means that you're getting the most taxes taken out of your check because you're saying you have 0 dependents. And generally what happens is that person gets a refund at the end of the year. Now, I'm saying this is general purposes, general examples anyway. So what a person could do with this is have higher dependents on there, or take out less in taxes so that your paycheck is bigger. And if your paycheck is bigger, where does that paycheck go? Well, it goes to pay down the HELOC, the balance, every single month. So for 12 months, your HELOC sits at a relatively lower amount, and you save money on that interest. Now you do your taxes, and guess what? You don't get a refund, or you owe the tax man money. So you use the government's money to help pay down your debt at a faster rate. Now, this comes with a huge disclaimer. Don't do anything that is illegal. Consult your accountant first, and everything I'm saying here is for educational purposes only. And make sure you do your own vetting on this. But that's a potential possibility too. That refund that you get at the end of every year was your money in the first place. So why'd you give it to the government for 12 months? I don't know. It's your money. Even if you just end up at zero every single year, that means you're not gonna owe, you're not gonna get money back. You're maximizing the amount of money that is going towards your HELOC. But just don't do anything illegal, and make sure you talk to an accountant first before you do that. Vacation home. Most lenders will allow you to buy a second home that's considered a vacation home. Now, there are certain rules that apply, and you'll have to talk to your lender about what the qualifications are for them. It can't be your vacation home. I'm pretty sure cannot be your next door, like the next door. That's not a vacation home. It has to be away from your house. And what you could do is you could buy a vacation home. You could put a first position HELOC on it, just like a regular residential house that you live in. And you can go there and visit and, have a vacation home like you would. But in the off season, when you're not there, you can also rent it out, and the renters can pay for the pay down the HELOC for you. So this tool can become a power tool, not only to pay off debt, but to potentially build wealth for yourself. And these are just 4 examples of what you can do. There are hundreds of different ways that you can make this explode in many different directions. But I hope this kind of blew your mind a little bit. I hope this maybe answered some questions for you that maybe you had some questions about. If you guys also have more questions, put something at the bottom of the in the comments. But it is important that you guys watch these videos and you take notes, and then you apply it to your own life outside of here in your own way. And as always, we want to ask you, did we answer all of your questions? What stopped you in the past from reaching your financial goals? What types of videos would you like to see next? Please like, comment, subscribe. If you guys are on Facebook, check us out at 9to5ers. We're here to make you smarter today and richer tomorrow. Thank you so much, guys. See you on the next one.